The ways that he would abuse her, he would throw like a hockey puck on her leg to cause a bruise, or put the hockey stick out in front of her and then she would run into it. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Thanks for stopping by. In this video, I want to touch on the mysterious disappearance of Sherri Papini. This documentary is called The Perfect Wife. If you saw that on Hulu, we're going to talk about it. But if you didn't, please go back and watch it because I'm going to spoil it for you. This one had me going. I initially thought that it was another wife is dead, husband killed her type stuff. And I was totally thrown for a loop because it's nothing like that, guys. The short of the story is her kidnapping was a hoax. Also, a Lifetime movie about it, if you want to go ahead and watch it. I haven't watched it, but that's on Hulu as well. Her husband gets home from work. Typically, she's already there with the kids from daycare, and she's not home. That's very suspicious, right? That's not her normal routine. So then he goes out looking for her, and he finds her cell phone. He did the Find Your Phone app, and it's thrown like in the woods somewhere, like on the side of the road. And he finds it and then calls the police because he knows something's wrong. Her phone was like raveled up with her headphones, and it had a piece of hair in it, which made him even more suspicious because he was like, maybe someone tried to grab her and her hair got caught up in the phone. I think they were focusing on past kidnappings in the area because the area has a history of people disappearing, and there was another kidnapping of Tara Smith. So I think they were thinking that this may be something where someone came back and kidnapped her as well. I can just say that she is really, really good at what she does. The wife, Sherri, she is a masterful manipulator. I mean, I was like rooting for her and going back and forth in this documentary several times, although you feel it like, wait a minute, something is wrong. And I could see why her husband was going back and forth. I feel bad for the husband, not really, because that's who he is, but I get why she married him because he's totally loyal, and there's nothing wrong with being loyal. What I'm saying is he's confused because they're trying to figure out who his wife is while they're looking for her. And he doesn't really want to speak bad about her, but then he keeps bringing up instances that were occurring, like her having boyfriends while they were married, not really wanting to discuss that because of his loyalty. So it was like a confusion for him. It's like he was defending her, right? But yet he wanted to find her because that was his wife. But he was just trying to defend her character. But it was hard to do that based on her past experiences. His childhood was abusive based on her parents, apparently, drug, alcohol abuse, and friends witnessed her trying to escape by coming over to their houses. They say she even ran away at 16 because she wanted to escape that world. She's known in the community as a super mom because, like, she throws the greatest parties you've ever seen for her children. The ex-boyfriend that she used to deal with, his name is James. The husband mentioned him in an interview. You know, James used to be abusive, but they never looked into James for some reason. And the husband, Keith, was not a suspect. So I don't know who the police were really focusing on. It was really confusing because you think they would have talked to James. They didn't. All of a sudden, 22 days later, Sherri Papini comes back in the highway screaming that she took me, wanting a stranger who was around her to call the police, and they did. And the police, he's trying to convey the message on what she's saying, because initially the guy said her boyfriend, she just got out of there with her boyfriend, and she said no in the background. No, I'm like, why would he say her boyfriend? Did she slip up and say her boyfriend to this guy? And then she's like, no, in the background, she took me. Gives her the phone. And she's like, I'm chained up and I want to call my husband. Her body is like really badly bruised all over the place. She has bruise marks that are everywhere. She has a tiny hole in her arm, but you could tell it's like a hole. The back of her body has been branded, literally branded with words on it. Her husband said when he first walked in, his first impression of her when he looked at her was she's lying. But then, based on all her bruises on her body, he went back to the emotional aspect of it, of getting caught up in it, in the whole thing with her. But his initial instinct was, she's lying. She initially didn't want to talk to detectives, but then when they came to her home to speak with her about it, she wanted to talk to the detective only if her husband was present with her. She later on said that 2 Mexican women kidnapped her. All of this, she's home for years to come. Her husband is going back and forth from believing her to not believing her. He just has that feeling. You know how you talk to someone and you can just tell they're lying, but you can't prove it, but you can feel it. So he's going back and forth from believing her to not believing her. Her husband is doing 4 hours of therapy with her after she gets back home to support her through all of this. Tuesdays, Thursdays, 2 hours a day, because Sherri wanted him to be there. Anything that Sherri asked Keith to do, Keith did it. She doesn't want to use the bathroom without the door being closed because the click of the noise reminds her of something that was traumatic based on her being kidnapped. Sherri's so terrified, they're covering the windows with blankets. She's sleeping with the lights on, you know, when she comes back, and because she's so fearful. Like, this, her whole house is just full of fear. Her kids are traumatized. They show one part in the video where basically Sherri tastes something that's really spicy, and then Sherri starts to react to the spiciness of it, and her son starts crying in front of her because he thinks that something bad is going to happen from her tasting spicy food. Sherri has like these 2 cuts on the back of her back. They look like wings. They're like this big. And she told her husband that her ex-boyfriend James did that to her. But then she told her girlfriend that they came from her father when she was younger. Come to find out, supposedly she did it to herself. The detectives finally decided to reach out to James. I don't know why it took them 3 years to reach out to James. He is 600 miles away. So they finally reached out to James. They go into James's house. They realized some of the description of what Sherri was describing based on her kidnapped environment looked exactly like James' house. So that's when they started digging a little more. Now, James is saying that Sherri was there, and Sherri basically said she needed somewhere to go, and she went to his house, and that's when he began to like physically abuse her with her consent. Like, she wanted him to abuse her and bruise her up. The ways that he would abuse her would, like, he said he never physically touched her, but he would throw like a hockey puck on her leg to cause a bruise, or put the hockey stick out in front of her and then she would run into it to cause bruises on her body. But people are saying that she's so manipulative that she convinced him to abuse her for whatever reason. I don't even know if she explained why, but she had him doing things to her body, and then basically after that she just was like, okay, and they just kind of left. He dropped her off on the highway, and that's where they found her. So they also have DNA from James suddenly, and when they present this evidence to Sherri, she's still denying it. She's like crying. She's like, oh my gosh, you found him? He was behind it? James was the one that was actually behind the kidnapping, as if she wasn't in the house with him the entire time, asking him to do those things to her. So she's crying. So it's really hard to think like, oh my God, she's busted. She's finally busted, and she's still lying and manipulating. Why did she do it? And the detective at the end brought out the fact that she had a severance package with AT&T, and then she used that severance package to pay for daycare, and she got a boob job. And once that was running out, her husband said he's not paying for daycare, and that's when this occurred. So he's kind of putting it together like maybe she knew that her lifestyle was about to change and she didn't want it to, so then she created this whole kidnapping thing, and come to find out afterwards, you know, she's home because she doesn't want her husband to leave her side. She doesn't want to leave the house. The kids are all, you know, fearful. Everyone's in the house just like in this trapped space with her. And that's kind of what I think she wanted, like a whole fantasy and an illusion. I think she got like 18 months in federal prison, and then she was released early. I don't know the length that she did, but she's out now. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. I really want to know why she did it though. Like, I like to know people's motive. The detective brought up a good, valid reason, but what do you think? Like, what was the reason for her really doing this? Like, was it just like entertaining and fun to her? Hanging out with me and going over this documentary, and let me know your thoughts.